Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads.
Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle Podcast. Jamie Eads joining you as I do each and every week. This is episode 149. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week out there in drumland. We're having a good week over here, as always. Excited for the start of fall this week. College football is back, so my Saturday afternoons are neurotic at best as a Notre Dame fan, but really enjoying this time of year, and I hope you guys are all having the same experience as me. We've got a great episode for you today. I'm going to be joined by one of my heroes, and I'm glad to say a personal friend of mine about a Cosmos Vault release. I'm going to be joined by the great Doug Cosmo Clifford right after this message from our sponsor, Los Cabos Drumsticks. The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks. All right, guys and girls, as mentioned, I'm going to be joined by our good friend Doug Cosmo Clifford, of course, from Creedence Clearwater Revival fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member here in just a moment. But I want to set this up. Of course, you guys know, if you've been listening from the genesis of this podcast, we've had Doug on 3 or 4 times in the past, and we always have a great time talking to one another. And it just means the world to me that Doug and I have stayed in touch, not in an interview setting, which is really cool for me because he's just such an influence on my own playing. And, CCR is one of those bands that, just defies time and logic, just a all-time great band from the United States. But Doug, in his post CCR days, had a lot of projects, and he has been releasing them periodically as Cosmo's Vault recordings. Now I don't know if it's actually a vault or if he's got a safe deposit box or what, but one of the releases that he found was an album that he recorded with the great Donald Duck Dunn from Stax Records fame and Bobby Whitlock from Derek and the Dominoes fame. And this album was recorded in 1978. It has not seen the light of day until now. And yes, I am a fan of Doug Clifford, but let me just tell you, when I got my hands on this and listened to it, I was absolutely floored at how good it is. The songs are great. The playing is great. It is just a fantastic record that I hope everybody will get their hands on. It is out now. I want to say the street date on this was September the 9th. So a couple of weeks ago. If you have not heard this yet, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go pick up this record. It is called California Gold. Again, Doug Cosmo Clifford featuring Bobby Whitlock. Fantastic record, and we had a really good time talking about it. So please help me welcome back to the Drum Shuffle, Doug Cosmo Clifford. Hey, good morning, Doug. How are you, sir?
About as good as you get.
That's fantastic. Well, it's been right at a year since we last talked. So I'll start with saying, how's everything going? I know that you've had some, some health issues and different things going on in your life, but has the last year treated you pretty well?
I would have to say I'm vertical, so I must be doing something right.
That's fantastic. That's the attitude we like to hear from you, Cosmo. That's fantastic.
Well, that's all I got, right? Is my attitude.
Well, the last time we talked, we were talking about, the great record, the Clifford Wright record that had come out of, as we call it, Cosmo's Vault. And you told me at that time, you said, hey, I've got some other stuff up my sleeve. I think it's a matter, there's a whole process that goes, that those things have to go through to clean them up and all that stuff. But, as we talk today, you just put out another find from Cosmo's Vault, called California Gold, with the great Bobby Whitlock on vocals. And I got to tell you, man, this record is smoking. It is fantastic. So congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we were trying to get a band together. I was talking to Dunn back in the day. Bless his heart, I miss him dearly. But anyway, I said, I'm looking for a singer. You got anybody that you can think of? He says, yeah, Bobby Whitlock. I said, oh, geez, Derek and the Dominoes. So Bobby came up to Northern California, where I was living, and with his wife and young child. His wife was pregnant, and they were broke, and so we, brought him in and got to know each other. And next thing you know, we're writing songs. And they're coming out pretty fast and furious. That's the way I like to write. Don't waste any time. You might miss a line or something that you don't want to forget, because it could be a really a better song with that in it. So anyway, we started writing, and then all of a sudden we had a handful of songs. I said, we better record these or we'll forget them. And look at what happens. You get 20 years in Cosmo's Vault, or 40 years, and that's a life sentence for a song. So that's what we did. We started the recording process, and then Doug had to bow out, because he got an offer with John Belushi and Aykroyd to be a blues brother, and that's a huge career jump. He was a star, and like a leprechaun, and Doug was a leprechaun who can play bass, like a mother, and so. It sort of just faded away, and that's when it went into Cosmo's Vault, and the rest. We've mentioned it already. So music is an amazing thing. Somebody came in, and I never just met him, and all of a sudden we're writing songs and have something that the day before it wasn't there. it's not an invention. It's a creation. So there's a lot of magic in and then if the songs are amenable to the people that are going to be playing those songs in a studio environment, then you're hitting a home run. So I had the rough mixes in the vault, and took them out and did the things that were necessary. And now I've got it. Same with the others. The Clifford Wright project. I had just the two track master at the time. It wasn't completed in that vein. And then we had other electronic gizmos. Russell DeShiel is very wise in those areas. I described what I wanted, and a couple of days later there it would be, and then that opened another door. Well, if you can do that to this, what about doing this to that? And so, okay, we'll do that. So we did all the things that we needed to get it ready, and then I sent it out to have it mastered. And what you hear is what we got. So I really do like producing records. It's part of the art form that is, there aren't that many producers out there that can do the things that we were doing with being limited to dealing with two tracks. And but you practice and you pay attention. You learn something, and put it to good use.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and just to clarify, so you there's a lot to unpack there, because you said Donald Duck Dunn had to kind of bow out, during these recording sessions, because he was going off to film, Blues Brothers with Belushi and Aykroyd. So that puts this right about, 78, 79 that these songs were written? Okay.
78, yeah.
And it's my understanding that most of the recording was done at Cosmo's factory, correct?
Well, most of the rehearsal was done there. We did some recording there, but, that facility was a remote vehicle that Stu Cook and I had, and we used to rent that truck out for capital, and then we would take that capital and invest it in the acts that we wanted to produce, and so that was getting kind of old, and that's why I wanted to get back into a band situation where you have a band with X amount of people, and the people you have are good. David Vega from Graham Central Station was one of the guitar players, and Tom Miller took Duck's place for pretty tall order. But the good news is that Duck was his idol, so he got a chance to meet him and talk with him and then play his part. So there were some rays of light there, but the vault said, "No, this isn't quite the time and the place, but I'll know when it is, and I'll let you know." I said, "Geez, thanks. The vault's talking to me."
Well, I mean, what I find amazing, and I don't know, and you may or may not remember, but we're talking 44 years ago. But was this project? How do I want to say this? Did you guys shop this to the record labels at that time, or did it immediately just kind of go into the vault when it was finished? Because I don't remember, you and Bobby ever having a touring band per se.
No, we did. We played a few gigs, but we didn't tour. Once things looked like they were not going to be as planned personnel wise. That's when I got the multi-tracks out and mixed down what you hear there on the recording of the sessions. And there were sessions in we did at the church in Marin County. We did Fantasy Records. They had some nice studios, a couple other studios around the Bay Area. So there was a lot involved in it. Different recording sessions with different songs, and so on and so forth. We wanted to get all the information and have it safely tucked away in the vault for another day. And now it's time. And this is really good rock and roll. I mean, I listened to it, and as a person who is listening to it, not the guy that co-wrote the songs and produced the music and played drums on it. It's not like that. It's like I'm, checking out this band and I'm saying they're pretty good, and it's one of those things. You're away from it for all these years, so it's all new. And in terms of that, there's no dings on the fenders because it hasn't been out on the street. So
right.
Now it is, and now I want to share it with the world, because the world needs more rock and roll and things that make your heart beat for the right reasons, not because of fear or what's going on in the world. This is relief. It's medicine. Music is medicine for me, and it's a great one. And with all the technology, you can always have a listening device on your body, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and amen to what you said. Music is medicine. And the thing that really struck me, when I gave it the first listen, first of all, for people that don't know, Bobby Whitlock, the guy that sang on this record, was in Derek and the Dominoes with Clapton. He's the guy that sang Layla and Bell Bottom Blues and all that stuff. So, but the thing that struck me the most was just how powerful his voice is. Everybody knows those recordings with Derek and the Dominoes and those things, but this is how do I want to phrase it? It's a good time record, right? It is
absolutely.
This is a record that you can put on at a party today and everybody's going to be wiggling their butts, right? I mean, that's what this is.
That's right.
It's just such a good sounding record, and it's so timeless. I mean, you can hear that it was recorded years ago, just because the technology has changed and our ears have changed as technology has advanced. But beyond that, this could be a record that was released yesterday by you guys. And that's what's so amazing to me. What do you remember about the recording sessions? I mean, can you go back when you listen to it? Can you go back and go, oh yeah, I remember laying this down in the studio 44 years ago?
Well, I do. One of the things you mentioned about how powerful Bobby's voice was, I'll take a little credit for that. But when we started working, and then he was singing, and he wasn't singing powerfully, and I said, "You got to quit smoking cigarettes, man. You got to quit smoking cigarettes. And so I got him to quit smoking cigarettes. And once, it was like a couple of weeks after he had quit, and I said, okay, phase 2 of this, you're going to start running every day. Because that was my routine. I always worked out. And I knew that this was going to be the biggest favor I could do for him as a vocalist. And sure as heck, you said it. He's just saying, when you open those kind of doors for a guy, all of a sudden he's got command of this thing that he had abused for years. It's refreshing for him. Wow, I can hit these notes, and then that inspires them to get down and boogie the way he does on this record, and he does just a masterful job. Also, I want to give him credit for his Hammond B3 work. He's a terrific organ player. The Hammond B3 being the organ of choice. You hear it all over this record, and it's an instrument that I've always loved. And Steve Winwood and guys like that, and Booker T. That wonderful sound with a little vibrato that whirls around. That's some pretty good rocking right there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's little substitute for a Hammond and a Leslie, right, on a record. I mean,
that's right.
It fills everything out and just sounds so good. Now, speaking of giving credit where credit is due, I've told you this, you're one of my lifelong heroes. We've had this conversation, not on the podcast, but, in some of our conversations kind of off to the side, that you're a huge influence on my own drumming. And I just love all the stuff from CCR. That whole catalog just means the world to me. But I was really surprised at your drumming on this record. It was, I'm not going to say the word busy, but there's a lot more in there than what folks would normally associate you with in CCR.
Exactly. Bingo. You hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah. You had some just absolutely ferocious drum tracks on this record that, I couldn't help but think, gosh, if they'd just turned Cosmo loose in the studio, 10 years before, those CCR songs would be a lot different, right?
Well, they would be, but what I did then fit what we were doing then, and what I did on this record was, when you're writing the material, that makes you approach things differently, and then also, we stretched out more than we did in Creedence, and so a lot of what you're talking about is my right foot and the bass guitar. And that was a lot of fun playing all those parts. And for me, less is best and all of that. Well, sometimes it isn't the best. And this band actually set the stage for that kind of playing. And I really enjoyed doing it. It's something I didn't get to do often, but I was doing it in that band, and it was just a real fun project.
Yeah, well, I just I don't want to use the word surprised, because everybody knows you're a phenomenal drummer, but it was different, and it had some of that, and I don't know, maybe Duck Dunn brings it out in drummers. You know, you mentioned the right foot and the bass guitar, but it had some of that Al Jackson Jr. feel to it. And I just felt like these songs have just tons and tons of soul to them as well. It's a rock record. Don't get me wrong, but you know, Bobby's voice lends itself to that very soulful, you know, bluesy kind of vocals. And, you know, there's a lot of movement in the songs. Maybe that's how I should say it. There's a lot of movement, and it's great.
Yeah, it is great. And you know, Bobby was the first, white, artist signed by Stax. So he's coming out of the Stax arena. That's R&B for sure, and you know his influences were shining on his vocals. Yeah, it was. You know, we were hungry and ready to go, and we wanted to represent what we did. You know, on a demo to try and get a deal. I don't know why that didn't happen, except for the fact that maybe the guys had to go a different direction. You know, and it just wasn't to be. You know, not everything works. Even when you have a jewel or gold in my case. California Gold. I'll be real happy to get some California Platinum. But the key to that is getting airplay. And you know, I've been doing a lot of these podcasts, not just for this project, but for the documentary on Creedence. It's going to be played tomorrow on Netflix. If you didn't know about that one, that's a great one to see. It's 90 minutes. It has the entire show at the Royal Albert Hall, where they're playing in the Beatles' house, and then I think 3 tracks from Woodstock and 3 tracks from Oakland Coliseum, which was our backyard. So
yeah,
and then there's interviews and stuff that I sort of put into use. I like to goof off, as most drummers do on their time off. And we were having dinner. Label, you know, we were meeting all the people that were selling our records overseas, and it was different companies. And so I said, another boring dinner. So I found some bicycles, silly bicycles like kids' bikes, and commandeered them and drove through the lobby of the hotel into our dinner on these bikes. And silly things like that, you know. Those were the happier days. With Creedence, we were trying to be number 1 in the world. We were number 2. And by the time we finished that tour, we were number 1 because Paul McCartney said, "See ya."
Yeah.
And so it was quite an experience. First time overseas, first time seeing all the great art and architecture and all the things that you see in Europe, and then also going into the Beatles' house and knowing that you kicked ass and were recapturing American rock and roll. The Brits saved it. They're the ones that saved rock and roll, and we came in and took it back.
Yeah, well, and that you did. And, you know, we've had this conversation before, you know, just the sheer output that you guys had in such a short amount of time with Creedence is, I mean, I don't know that it'll ever be replicated by anyone ever again. That's just amazing to me. I just wonder, just thinking out loud here, I wonder how would things have been different, I guess is the question, had a project like the California Gold Band, gotten a record deal and went out on tour and all those things. And I know that we can't look backwards, but do you have any regrets about anything? I'm guessing the answer is no, but the floor is yours.
When somebody asks somebody that question, of course they have regrets, but you don't talk about them because it's time gone by. I mean, I think it would have been a terrific band. I think with the people we had and the writing thing that Bobby and I had, we were certainly not short on material. So a band that has that going for it, and the players that we had surrounding the project, especially Duck, good records would be made. I will tell you that.
Yeah. Well, and I guess for people that would ask the question, I mean, I know the answer to this, but a lot of people would say, why has this record sat in Cosmo's vault for 44 years? Why didn't they just put it out? Not thinking about the mechanics that were in place in 1978. You just couldn't put out a record by yourself back then. You
Right.
had to have distribution from a major label. You had to have a team in the advertising department at that label to get it out to the radio stations. And for better, for worse, you had to have people that were willing to, grease the skids at the radio stations a little bit to help your stuff get on the air. That was just the era that we lived in back then. And you couldn't just put a record out by yourself. So, explain that a little bit if you don't mind.
Well, back then, the way things worked is you would cut some demos, and we did that, and then you would play gigs, and you would find the companies that you liked, that you wanted to that you were interested in making a deal with, and then you give them the tape to see if they want to do business with you. And if they do, then the next thing that you do is you go to one of your gigs and you invite the A&R man from that label to come and watch you play a show. And so that's how it was done. So that the recording was part of the one of the cogs in the wheel to get a deal. And if it didn't work, it didn't get past the go button, then its purpose was not to be. So when there's something that you have that has some merit to it unto itself, but it's not the wrench that you're reaching for to put the wheels on the car, so to speak, then you put it in the vault, and eventually that it'll have its own time. It's not something I would even think about. That's I went on to the next, which was the Clifford Wright project. Same thing. Steve wouldn't go out and play gigs, and he said, "I've already done that." And I'm like, "What?" And so off to the vault you go. So, then after that, I did a solo album. Just maybe I can get a deal as a producer, and be the artist just because I didn't want to go beating the bushes and go through that whole process with a bunch of guys. If I did it myself with the help of Russell DeShiel and Chris Solberg, then that was the plan. Well, the plan didn't work. Put it in the vault.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned your solo album. You so graciously sent me a copy of that long before it came out of the vault, and it's one of my most prized possessions. I love that record. It's just such a great record. It begs the question, and I know you've got legions of fans out there, and they're all they're screaming at me right now, ask the question, what else is in the vault? Is there other stuff that you haven't even unearthed yet? Are there other projects that you can remember playing on that we may hear someday?
Yeah. And what I've got in the vault is solo stuff of mine. So there might be. I had Russell and I did 3 songs with Thomas. Jesus, I'm having a brain for it. Mickey Thomas.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We have that, and there's 3 songs, and 2 of the 3 are really good. And we've thought about maybe trying to get an ad behind it, because a couple of the songs a car company could use by virtue of the subject matter that the song's about. So there are maybe a couple of little things like that, but that's there's a guy that he's got his gig with the Starship, and I haven't seen him in a while, but there's potential there. Maybe something he would want to do, and we could sell a song. So who knows? It's all what's in there is in there, and all the things that are in there are seeing the door open, and their pals are jumping out out of the airplane, pulling that ripcord.
I gotcha.
Now that doesn't mean we were getting ripped.
You're right. Well, so, and I'm curious, just knowing Bobby's history, he kind of literally disappeared from the music business for, gosh, I don't know, 30 years, 35 years, and then kind of resurfaced in the late 90s, early 2000s. Have you been able to talk with Bobby through this process when you found this stuff?
Oh, sure. When I found it, this is good enough, but even better than that. This is probably the best thing in the vault. So it's really time to get it out there.
I got you.
And so I called him up and told him what I was doing, and he was happy about that. I'm doing the whole thing as a producer. I have my own label now.
Yeah, so, Cliff Songs Records, right?
Yeah, Cliff Song Records, and it's distributed by Sony Orchards. Bob Frank, who's a veteran distributor, and so I've got the parts are good. I just need one hit to put myself on the map and be able to put out more songs from the vault. But right now, first things first, you got to take care of business, follow through, get it. And that's how the vault happened to come along. You have something that you don't want to throw away, but it's not something that's valid at that time. So that's the story of the vault.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so glad that this stuff is seeing the light of day. And, I just, again, I'm a fan, that, and I don't care to tell you that, but this record is 12 songs, and like I say, it is a good time record. If you put this thing on, I guarantee you are going to smile from ear to ear throughout this record. I mean that sincerely. It is just a great rock record. And far and away, my favorite song on the record is Rollin' On. I love that song.
That's a beauty.
I love the thought process behind that song. I love the subject matter. And everybody's playing on it is just impeccable. It's just such a good song. And the whole record is great. And, I know it just hit the streets on September 9th. And I know that there were some availability to pre-order. We're doing this interview obviously after September 9th, but,
right.
We're about a week in. What has the reception been thus far? I know you're doing lots of interviews.
Well, it's the same as what we're having right now. People are blown away with it, when you're in a big band and you have a certain thing that you're doing. For me, is playing drums with Creedence Clearwater Revival. People don't know you musically other than he's the drummer for Creedence. Well, I can do a lot of other things as well, and I can write, I can produce, I can, singing's out now. I did my singing album. I gave myself a B+ on it. So that's good enough for me. I'll go back to singing, not in the vault, but in the shower.
That's funny. Well, I think the solo record was fantastic as well. Even your singing record is a great record. And, I think this is fantastic that this thing is finally seeing the light of day. And I hope that it turns from California Gold to California Platinum. But I think these days, the only way you get a platinum record is if you give away 1 million copies, right? I think that's the only way to get there these days. It's just the business is so different now than it was even 20 years ago. It's just, and it's almost completely foreign to me. Now it's all about the streaming and all of that stuff. And I won't debate that again, but my hope for this record for you is that people just hear it, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing is, and we joked about this last time. The good news is everybody can put out an album today. The bad news is everybody can put out an album today.
That's good. I like that.
Everything people say to me all the time, music is a lost art form. Selling albums doesn't exist anymore. There aren't any good albums coming out. And I tell people without fail, yes, there is good music coming out every Friday in this country. You just have to search for it really hard because what you hear on the radio is not the good music that's coming out today. That is not what that is. You have to search it out because there's just an ocean of new music every single week. And to find one little droplet of water in that ocean is a hard task.
Yeah, it is different, and there are a few things that are the same. Radio's out there, but radio in itself has changed. I like being able to, put the radio on in my car. That's what I do. Or if I'm listening to a certain CD, I'll I'll do that. But most of the music listening that I do, people, somebody asked me the other day in an interview, what do you listen to nowadays? And I go, well, I listen to all kinds of things. I listened to Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto 2 days ago because it's something that one of my favorite records from going back to when I was in high school, actually. And I used to play that a lot when things were kind of tough. The divorce that the parents should have gotten 5 years ago, but we're staying here for the children. Well, first of all, it's not the children; it's me, and I'm a child, not a children. So I listen to a lot of stuff, but when I listen, I'm playing with it. I had a session with James Brown. I played with our record, California Gold, jammed with it yesterday. So I listen when I'm practicing, and most of the time. But to sit and listen to something, not something I do because I've got so much on my plate that needs to be cleared off before I can sit in my lazy boy chair and fall asleep.
Well, I hear you. I mean, I just think that's the way of the world these days. I mean, there's so much stuff going on and so many things competing for our attention. It's hard to find these gems when they drop out of the sky or jump out of the vault, as it were. But Doug, I just can't thank you enough. And I've told you this privately. Our friendship means the world to me. And there's an old saying that you should never meet your heroes because you'll always be disappointed. And I can tell you that is absolutely false. I know that it's false because Al Jackson Jr. Was my hero, my mentor, and he was a dear, wonderful guy and a terrific friend and mentor. So I'm with you on that one. Yeah. I mean, I just can't tell you how much it means to me that we've stayed in touch over the years. I started this crazy podcast in, I want to say 2018. Early 2018. And you were one of the first guys to come on. I think you were my 10th or 11th guest on this podcast. And, the fact that we've stayed in touch has just meant the world to me. And I'm so glad that, you came on to talk about this vault release. I'm telling everybody now, go pick up a copy of California Gold. It's Doug Clifford featuring Bobby Whitlock. I promise you this record is going to make you have the happy feels when you listen to it. There's no other way to describe it. It's so good. And Doug, thank you so much for taking time to do this again. Oh, the pleasure is mine. We've always had a good time and a couple of chuckles here and a couple of chuckles there. That's and drummers. There is something to be said about that fraternity, and I'm not leaving women out. If they're a drummer, they're going to be in a fraternity and doing it the way they do it. It might sound crazy, but you don't want to leave anybody out, especially these days, especially if they're deserving of it. If they're good, they should be heard. Absolutely, I can't disagree with you on that at all. And I have said this before. Being a drummer, it truly is a fraternity, as you mentioned. And I make the joke all the time. If you have a plumbing problem at your house, call a drummer. If you have a problem with your car, call a drummer. If you need somebody to help you move, like you're moving your house, call a drummer, because drummers always say yes, right? If you need a hand with something and you've got a buddy that's a drummer, they will always say, sure, I'll help. I'm glad to help. I don't know what that is, but it's there.
Well, you're right. And it's just the makeup of, we in a music situation, a song, we're the foundation. So everything starts with the foundation. So that's just our job. So when you ask somebody, a drummer, for assistance here and there, that's what we do. We hold up the house. So.
That's exactly right. Well, Doug, it's always a pleasure talking to you. We're going to send some folks your way to check out this new record, and I wish you, as always, nothing but the best with it. When you find that next Vault release, make sure you let me know, because we'll do this again.
I like the idea.
All right, man. Doug, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
All right, guys and girls, that's going to wrap up episode 149 of the Drum Shuffle podcast. As always, a billion thanks to Doug for taking time out of his schedule to come on the show and talk to us. I always have a great time visiting and catching up with Doug, whether he has an album to promote or not. He's just a living legend in the world of rock and roll. Fantastic drummer, fantastic human. Thank you, Doug, for taking time to do this. I appreciate you so much. As I say to you guys every single week, hit the thumbs up, the subscribe button on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. It helps us more than you'll ever know. It's hard for me to believe that I'm coming up on 5 years of doing this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and week out. We cannot do it without every one of you. So thank you so much. The biggest thing you can do to help us out is share a link with a friend. Just say, hey, I think you'd enjoy this podcast. Check it out. It costs you nothing and means the world to us. I appreciate your efforts around that. We answer every single email that we get here at the Drum Shuffle Podcast. That email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. And of course, you can find more information on me over at jamieeads.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate it. We'll be back next week with another great episode. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.